All right, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen with you guys. And what I thought we would do first, guys, is I want to kind of go back over, just as a little refresher. I want to kind of go back over our basic principles of shot composition, okay? Just the things to help you guys do well. We're getting ready to do our project. We're ready to go. Max, you're not in this class, buddy. You were supposed to be here yesterday. I got you tomorrow, son. All right, here we go. General tips and tricks, okay? So placing your subject within the frame to create a clear, powerful image, using those camera movements, activating our depth of field so that what we're going to produce is going to be not only pleasant for the viewer, they're going to be provided a lot of information as well, okay? So first and foremost, what I'm going to do is we're going to call these out, all right? And then you're going to explain to me what these things mean. Number one, always follow the rule of thirds. Who can tell me what we're trying to stop people from doing by following the rule of thirds? Amaya? What don't we want them to do?
To put the object or subject in the middle.
Yeah, we don't want that, okay? So we want to follow the rule of thirds. And in order to follow the rule of thirds, you're going to take your frame and you're going to divide it into 3 vertical columns, okay? And put 2 vertical lines to do so. That would be the left vertical third and the right vertical third. My question to you is, what do I do with those vertical thirds there? What do I do with them with my subject? What do those vertical third lines have to do with my subject? This could be to anybody. Anybody? Ella?
I couldn't hear you. You glitched for me.
Oh, I glitched out. Okay. So my question is, Amaya told us that we don't want to put our subject in the middle of the frame. We want to follow something called the rule of thirds, right?
Yeah.
What is that?
The rule of thirds is that the subject has to be on the left 2/3 of the frame.
Okay, the left or the right vertical third line, those vertical lines, okay? Now, Kayla Stump, what vertical third do I put them on? How do I tell?
The opposite one that they're facing.
Outstanding. Why do we always put them on the opposite? Who remembers?
So it doesn't
Noah Parker, go ahead.
So it doesn't look like they're about to run out of the frame?
Yeah, that way we guarantee we keep them in the frame. Think of the cheetah that we did last time, all right? If they speed up or slow down, they could easily fall right out of the frame, okay? Rule number 2, general tip number 2, always fill the frame. This is our second shot composition rule. What do I mean by this, Daniela? What do we mean by filling the frame, dear?
Don't leave like too much room on the sides or like on top of the head. Like make sure the subject is close to the image so that it's like all the image and not like all the way like behind the wall.
Yeah, we want our subject, whatever or whoever our subject is, to be as large as possible within the frame, okay? That way we're providing as much information as possible to our viewer. It also is going to make our shot look much more powerful and much more dynamic. Number 3, always use a stabilizing device. What's a stabilizing device, Kamori? Or can you give me an example, Kamori, of a stabilizing device?
An example of a stabilizing device is a tripod.
Good, a tripod is good job. A tripod. What's another one that we use a lot of? Mr. Waz's favorite, Noah?
A monopod.
Good. And what we do is we mount the camera onto that object, and what it's going to do is it's going to stabilize the camera. What is that going to prevent? Isabella?
It is going to prevent like a shaky type of like video or photo, whatever you're doing. So it's going to be
Man, you guys are rock stars. You guys are awesome. I love it. Number 4, always set your depth of field by zooming in or out before you push record. So we don't want to be recording when we're zooming, okay? Because it can end up looking jerky, or you might go too far and have to zoom back out or whatever. So when do we zoom, or when can we install a zoom then? At what process in the filmmaking do we install a zoom then? Kylie, during what?
Before you press record.
Yep, before we press record, to set it ahead of time. But when, let's say I want the shot to zoom in, when do I put the zoom in then? Do I use the zoom button on the camera? No, we talked about that. When do we want to do, or where are we going to do the zoom? Daniela? During what?
When you're editing the video?
Outstanding. During the editing process, okay? That way we can make sure that our zoom is nice and smooth and we get it exactly to the frames that we want, okay? Oh, Umberto, I'm going to call on you for number 5, buddy. Make sure that you have a good light source in front of your subject. What don't we want our subject to be? Starts with a B.
We don't want the subject to be backlit.
Good job. We don't want the subject to be backlit, because that means the light is going to be behind them, not in front of them, which means they're going to look very dark or shadowy, like we are right now in our little Zoom call, right? Number 6 is self-explanatory. Always set your focus before you push record. Number 7, here's where we're getting to the hard one. All right, I need Rockstar for this one. Always check your field of view. So remove middle ground objects that may muddy up your composition, or may muddy your composition, make it look too busy. How do we do this? Think back to the picture with the flowers and the road and and the city skyline, right? How do we get rid of the road and the cars and all the extra junk in the middle if the flowers are our subject and they're in the foreground, and we want the skyline to be our background? How do we get rid of that other stuff? Do I break out the airbrush and start doing this in the editing situation? Noah, what do I do?
You want to get like as close to the same angle as your main subject as possible.
Good. So I'm going to lower the camera so that it's at the same eye level as my subject. I'm going to fill the frame, which means make it as big as I can within it. And by doing that, our subject will then block out the middle ground stuff, and we'll be left with just our main subject and the background, okay, giving us a nice, clean, clear overall composition. Guys, you had just proved to me that you guys are the rock stars, and that's why I love you guys. You guys are kicking booty. Now, what I want you guys to do right now is, if you have not turned these notes in, I want you to go ahead and do that. Now, last class, we did it at the end of class. Was there anybody that wasn't able to turn them in at the end of class that maybe forgot? If you did, then go into the assignment in Canvas, click onto the assignment that's titled 2-3, The Perfect Shot, and turn it in. While we're waiting for everybody else to do, for those people to do that, I would like you to go into Canvas, go into Module, okay? I'll show you here. We're going to go into the modules, okay? And I want you to find for me Module 3. So we completed Module 2. Now we're going to start Module 3-1. Or Module 3, rather, which is called Film Production. Now, what this unit or module is going to be covering, guys, is the actual creation of your video, okay? That's going to go with pre-planning, which we use storyboarding access for. It also covers the actual filming process, also the editing, and then our final creation. You guys with me? So we're right there. It's time to start getting our first project ready. Now, I want you to click on the assignment that says 3-1 from script to storyboard. And then nice and loud, Isabella, read that first paragraph for me, dear.
Today we will be discussing how to pre-plan your video projects. Storyboarding is the act of drawing out and labeling specific camera shots that you plan to use in your video prior to the actual filming. This way you can plan and actually prep visually all of your shots before getting into the expensive aspect of actually filming.
Good job. So just like always, we're going to click on the camera and it's going to force you to make a copy. I want you to remove the words copy of when it opens up in Google Slides and add your name to the end of the title for me, please. Go ahead and do that now.
Mr. Wazani,
Yes, sir.
we hit the camera, right?
Yes, sir. Click on the camera.
All right.
So just like I just did, okay? And when you do that, you're going to make a copy of it, and you're going to change it so that it says 3-1 from script to storyboard dash your name, please.
All right.
All right. Now, normally, guys, we would be filling in things, or I'd be asking you guys to write stuff down or add things to these notes, right? Because this is so much more visual, I want you to really focus on the information. And in order to do that, I'm going to actually take that away from you. You're not going to have to type anything in today, okay? But the information that I show you and the video clips that I show you are super, super duper important, okay? So we need to make sure that we're focused and listening. All right. So this is going from script to storyboard. So when you are filming, you're going to have a script or a story. Okay. And then the idea is to take your script and turn it into your video. Now, in order to do that, what generally happens, well, let me ask you this. Have you ever read a book that was so intense that as you were reading, your brain couldn't help but make pictures in your head of what you were reading? You guys ever read a story like that? Yes? This is exactly what's happening, okay? The director, the cinematographer, the director of video, all these guys are gonna, and a storyboard artist are gonna get together in a room when they get the script and the screenplay, okay? And they're gonna read it together. They're gonna do what's called a table read. And they read through the story, and as they're reading it, the director is telling the cinematographer and the visual effects artist and mostly the storyboard artist what his brain is seeing, what his brain is creating, what he wants this shot to look like. And the storyboard artist is going to do a real quick thumb sketch, okay, so that he has all this written down, and then he's going to go back to his office and he's going to clean it up and make it look really good. And then they're going to meet again and go back over the story using those story sketches. See, instead of writing down in words what they want it to look like, they're going to use pictures instead. You guys with me? Thumbs up if you're with me. These are examples of storyboards, and they look very similar to what, guys? What's this look a lot like that you guys have seen in the past already? Noah?
A comic strip.
Outstanding. Good. A comic strip. And a comic strip is a great visual idea of what a storyboard is. Okay. Now, storyboards themselves, actually, the process actually began back in the late 1920s, early 1930s. Walt Disney is the one that came up with this process. Yes, that Walt Disney was a real dude, okay? It's not just a place where a mouse lives, okay? He was a real guy, okay? Now, animation and movies are very, very expensive to make and very expensive to film. You with me? So Walt needed a way to pre-plan and visually show what he wanted these movies to look like before they went and filmed. You don't want people you don't want to be paying people to sit around all day. Do you know what I mean? You have it planned already. By having that plan, that visual plan ahead of time, like you see here, they knew exactly what each shot was going to look like. They knew exactly what props they were going to need, what background scenery they needed, what people they needed there that day to film, what actors they would need that day. And that way they're only paying the people that needed to be there, and they already had it planned out, so nobody was just sitting there. Do you know what I'm saying? It made the process much, much, much faster, and in doing so, made the process much, much cheaper. You with me? Because it didn't take as long to film. Does this make sense to everybody? Yes? Good. So what is a storyboard? A storyboard is something very similar that you have used all the time already, and those are graphic organizers, okay? That means they're pictures. They're a way to illustrate the story and display the sequences of events and the purpose and all that kind of stuff pre-planned before you actually get into that process again, like we said, okay? Now we're gonna start by looking at a movie. This was actually a short movie that was made by the Walt Disney Corporation for the public. So Walt Disney used to have a show on TV in the 1950s, and they would make like movies to help people understand like how they created stuff. And this is one of those movies. It started, like we said, with Walt Disney, and that's what we're going to look first at. Is we're going to watch a short portion of this called Finding Lady. This is based on Lady and the Tramp and the art of storyboarding, okay? Now, while we're watching this, I want you to pay very, very close attention, okay? And I'm going to stop the share because I forgot to turn the sound on. I always forget to do that. Can everybody see this now? Yes? All right. Now, I apologize for the film quality because, you know, it was old and that's just the way it is. All right. But watch, pay close attention, and we'll see part of this here.
A great storyboard artist isn't necessarily Michelangelo, isn't necessarily a fabulous animator. What a great storyboard artist is a great communicator. Hi, this is a storyboard drawing, one of the essential tools in the making of an animated film. Storyboards allow the filmmakers to see a blueprint of the movie before we go into actual animation production. Walt Disney developed the use of storyboards way back in the 1920s for his classic Mickey Mouse cartoon, Steamboat Willie. Storyboards are like little comic book panels of the entire movie.
I mean, look at it. This is really cool, but they have like entire rooms dedicated to these storyboard panels. And what that allows them to do is that allows them to have these little storyboard panels and put them up in order, and then they tell the story in that order from it. That way they can look at it and be like, I don't know if this shot really works here, or maybe we should try something different, or maybe, ooh, this part, we should take it off and move it to a different part. This would work better in this part of the story. Okay, it makes it very fluid to plan these things out ahead of time.
And they're used by tacking them up on a bulletin board so you can actually see the continuity of the movie. You can see the rough state.
Now, the coolest part about this video is it shows you the actual physical, historical storyboard drawings from these amazing Disney classics, movies that you guys have all seen, like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, okay? And what's cool is if you've seen them anytime recently, and me having a 3-year-old daughter, I've seen all these very, very recently because that's all we watch is Disney at my house. These look, it shows you exactly what the pre-idea was and how close to reality they actually became, which is really cool.
Staging and camera positions. You can see the acting of the characters. The dialogue is written underneath. In animation, storyboarding has always been and is still used mainly to develop the story.
Now in our studio, we don't write our stories. We draw.
That's actually Walt Disney. If you guys didn't know, he was an actual guy.
Storyboards, being an effective and very inexpensive way of developing the content for the movie, gave Disney the opportunity to board up something and see if it worked before expensive animation took place.
You start off and you start visualizing it like a comic strip, kind of. You work out the business and you develop it that way. And then you look at it and you go, is this working? Is this funny? Is this dramatic? What can we change? So this is why we work like this, because these things can be changed so quickly, you know? They're on, they're off.
So they can take them on,
and
take
move
them
things
off,
around
move things around.
see how things play.
A great storyboard artist can put down on a storyboard the minimum amount of information necessary to get a very dynamic and quick read on the content and the emotions in the sequence.
When you're actually drawing the story sketches, you get emotional about them yourself, and so you're looking
This
for
one
things
breaks my
that
heart
have a
every
lot.
time. I don't know if any of you guys have seen Dumbo, but the part where the mom is like locked up in the cell and Dumbo is like outside and they're holding trunks. It's the most heartbreaking thing in the world. It's terrible. Anyways.
Heart, and you are.
Go away. So here's one that we've seen. This is a little bit newer, a little bit more up your alley and more your time frame. So these are like the original storyboard sketches of the movie Cars. Okay. And you can see in here, it tells you what's happening. There's information on here, but these boxes here are called panels, okay, or frames. And what I want to show you next is an in-depth look at how they do this, why they do it, and why it's important, okay? Now, the best part about this is they show the original storyboards of these amazing, award-winning, worldwide known movies, and then they show you the storyboard sketches that go with it and the scenes and how they actually looked in finale. So I want you to watch this with me real quick.
Hey guys, I'm Kevin. You might know me as the sound guy at Rocket Jump Film School, but I've also storyboarded some of our shorts and shows. I'm going to share some of the basics about storyboarding with you today.
Star Wars, Empire, Indiana Jones, you saw Aladdin in there.
Storyboards are illustrations that represent the shots that will ultimately make up a movie.
What movie is this from? Just by seeing the glass rippling like that, you already know what it is. Noah, what is it, dude?
One of the Jurassic Park movies.
Yeah, the first Jurassic Park scene, right before we're about to see the T-Rex, right? It's real quiet, it's dark, and nobody knows what's going on, and they're scared, and everybody, you know, the cars aren't working, and then there's the cup of water sitting on the dash, man, and then all of a sudden you hear that, and it's causing the ripples in the cup, right? And it is a fantastic way of creating the suspense of it. But they had this all planned out ahead of time in the storyboard.
Movie. They allow you to build the world of your film before you actually build it. There aren't any strict exacting rules on how to do storyboards. Conveying information is what's important.
That's the first thing we have to remember. There really aren't a lot of rules in storyboarding. It's an individual thing. It's how it works best for you, okay? But there's two rule sets that we're going to follow, and we're going to talk about those. One is always draw it exactly the way you want it to look. By that I mean, if you've got a person in your shot and you want it to be a close-up, then don't draw their whole body in the frame. Do you know what I'm saying? Only draw the head. You want it to look exactly like you want it to appear on film, okay? And the second one we'll talk about later, but this one's from T2 Judgment Day.
Storyboards are ultimately a technical document, a tool. So it doesn't matter if you're a skilled illustrator or not. This can work just as well as this.
Wayne could take care of this.
Okay?
Yeah,
you don't have to be a great artist to do
Even
this.
if you struggle with perspective or can barely draw a stick figure, you can still convey what types of shots you want and their basic composition. Who storyboards? Typically, the director sits down with a storyboard artist to help articulate their vision. However, it's not uncommon for cinematographers and production designers to join in the process as well. At Rocket Jump, I usually meet with the director and produce rough thumbnail sketches that summarize the important information in each panel, and then afterward I'll fill in the details on my own, meeting with the director once again after completing the panels to make sure everything works. We'll then share the completed panels with the rest of the team. So let's break down the parts of a storyboard. The panel, or frame, is a rectangle that represents what the camera will see. Panels come in a bunch of different shapes. Pick a panel shape that matches your shooting aspect ratio. Square, widescreen, really, really widescreen. A person drawn really small in the panel is a wide or established.
So because we can see her full body, what shot is this?
Is it the
Amaya?
full? Wait. Is it in the full shot?
It is a full shot. So because I want to show her full body, that's the way I'm going to draw it. Because I want to show her doing that, then that's the way it's going to be drawn, like you saw here in the actual drawing. Okay. But if it's a close-up,
shot,
it's going to be
a big head taking up half
like this. Okay. So this is from the movie The Exorcist.
the panel is a close-up.
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
You see what I'm saying? So you draw it like you want it to actually appear. So if you want this to be a close-up shot, then you draw it as a close-up shot.
You'd like that?
Deciding where you put the person in your frame is the basis of your composition. This may seem really basic, but this has a huge impact on how you prepare for your shoot. These illustrations give your cinematographer a starting point. Things like camera angles, lighting, depth of field, the whole gamut of decisions can be informed by the storyboards. It's also a great way to decide what you'll need out of your locations. Do you really need a giant bottomless pit? Or can you get away with one visual effects wide shot and then cover the rest in tighter shots?
So it's not just a matter of figuring out whether the story is going to work when you're creating a storyboard. It's going to help you prep everything for the actual filming as well. It lets you know what kind of props you're going to need, what backgrounds you're going to need, what costumes we're going to need, who's going to be filmed that day, what kind of special effects we're going to need that day, what kind of people are going to be working there, how many microphone guys are we going to need, what kind of lighting sources. So it helps you have all that information ahead of time so that you can get there and film and be done with it. So it speeds up the process quite a bit. Now, this next part is the only other rule that I want us to follow. Like we said, in storyboarding, there's not a lot of hard and fast rules. There's only two that I want you to follow. One, draw it the way you want it to be. So if you want it to be a close-up, then draw it as a close-up. But the second thing is to use arrows in your drawings. Arrows are going to help denote movement by both the camera, like we learned yesterday, like panning or tilting or zooming in and out or point of view or lead room, right? But also any movements by the characters, okay?
Okay, let's talk about arrows. So now that we have a panel with a character in it, let's say that character is moving to the left. By drawing an arrow pointing to the left, we show where that character, or door, or dinosaur is moving. There's no real rule to drawing arrows, and everyone has their own personal style. But what's important is that your arrows are easy to read and make sense. Here's some examples of arrows. Arrows for characters moving towards camera. Arrows for characters moving away from camera. This character's kneeling down. And this character's head is falling off. Arrows within the panel usually mean a subject is moving in the shot. Arrows around the edges usually imply some sort of camera movement.
So if you have an arrow inside of the panel, the subject is moving. If you have an arrow outside, the camera is moving. You guys with me? Simple ideas. Draw it like you see it. Use arrows to show the movements of both the camera and the subject. And that's it.
So here, the raptor lunges right, and the camera pans left. Now let's talk about camera movement. Camera movement arrows also aren't really standardized, but let's go over some common ways camera movement is illustrated. Dolly movements are typically done with one arrow, often narrowing a little bit to suggest movement in or out of 3D space. Both dolly shots and zooms can also be illustrated by placing arrows in all four corners of the panel. This shows a widening.
Okay. Zooming. If we want to zoom, we draw arrows in all four corners. So you see the car is moving forward because it's inside the frame. Okay. But as the car is moving towards us, the camera is going to zoom. That's what those four red arrows on the outside refer to. Okay. If we want to zoom out, then the arrows would be 4 arrows in each, 1 arrow in each corner for a total of 4, and they would be pointed outwards.
Or narrowing of perspective. You can draw a panel within your panel to show how far your dolly or zoom goes. Clearly conveying information is key, so it's better to over-explain than to confuse people.
So that was a key phrase right there. It's better to over-explain. Now we're going to use the lines next to the panel to over-explain. See, next to each panel on the storyboard, there's a series of lines to help you describe what's going on. Ideally, the director should be able to take the storyboard and film the entire thing using strictly the storyboard, if you've done your job correctly as a storyboard artist.
Pans are often shown with an arrow on the side of the panel, either pointing to the left or to the right. Tilts up and down are done much the same way, except with the arrows at the top or bottom of the panel. You can also elongate the panel to fit the entire shot in a single drawing. Since this can get a little confusing, it's okay to make a note indicating whether or not the shot is tracking versus panning or dollying versus zooming, because arrows are often used the same way in both instances. You can make your notes beside the panel or in the arrow itself. Sometimes you'll need more than one drawing to illustrate what's happening in a single shot, especially if it's a really complicated action or camera movement. When you take panels with angle, composition, on-screen movement, and camera movement, and then combine these panels into a sequence, you have the foundation of your movie. Storyboards are particularly useful for preparing scenes that require multiple effects techniques. For this scene from Truck Flipper vs. Bus Puncher, we used storyboards to decide what was going to be stunts, what was going to be practical on-set special effects, what was going to be green screen, and what was going to be CGI, based on exactly what kind of action was needed in each specific shot. Without planning ahead, a scene like this would have been impossible to shoot in the amount of time we had available. Storyboards are typically created based off a completed script, but if you're doing a story that's extremely visual, storyboards essentially can be your script, like with Mad Max Fury Road. Since it's such a visual film, the beats were more effectively planned out with pictures than with text on a page. While this is an extreme example, this holds true for preparing all visually complex scenes. There's also plenty of other alternatives to storyboarding. Stanley Kubrick used actual photos.
So when we're looking at this stuff, guys, the storyboard provides a ton of information for us to pre-plan out what we want our movie to look like and help save us a bunch of time and a bunch of money when we're creating these things, okay? It also makes us have all the information possible before the day we have to film, okay? Now, like we said before, arrows are very important for us, okay? Arrows are very, very important for us. By having the arrows on the outside of the frame, we're telling the camera what has to happen. We're denoting camera movement. If the panel has the arrows inside of the frame, then we're telling you that the subject is going to be moving, okay? So these right here are the only 2 rules that I want you to follow when you're doing your storyboarding. Okay, the only 2 hard and fast rules that we're going to use. 1, always draw it the way you want it to look, and 2, use arrows to denote any kind of movement from camera or subject, okay? So when we go through this, always draw each frame exactly what you want the camera shot to look like, exactly. And when you're using your camera movements, you're going to draw those in there as well. Now, they made a good point in the video when they were discussing over-explaining. Next to each panel, there is always going to be a series of lines. Okay, so look at my example here, Kadarian. Next to each panel is these lines. And on these lines, we're going to explain as much information as possible so that when it comes time to actually filming, you know what you want it to be. Okay? Now, there are 7 questions that I want you to answer no matter what. These things must be on your lines. Okay? Can you put other things on there as well to help explain? Absolutely. But these 7 are a must. Okay? The first one being the paragraph number. Okay? If you're using a script, then it's easy to figure out what paragraph you are in the script or the story, and then put that paragraph number here so you know that this is the image of what that paragraph is going to look like. Does that make sense? The next thing is the subject name. This is going to help you figure out or have on your storyboard what people you're going to need for filming that particular day. Okay? The third thing is the type of the shot. Okay? Is this going to be a medium shot, a medium close-up? Is this going to be a long shot? Is this going to be an extreme long shot? Is this going to be an extreme close-up? Whatever the shot is, we're going to put the name on there as well, so you already know what it's supposed to be. We're also going to then put the shot angle. How is the camera set up? Is the camera going to be on a horizon angle? Is it going to be high angle or low angle or oblique? Okay? Is the person in the shot going to be in a 3/4 profile or front facing, or are they going to be in a profile? Okay? The next thing you're going to put down is any camera movement. If there's camera movement, are you going to pan? We're going to pan to the left when this happens. Is there any subject movement? Is the subject going to move? The subject will slowly raise their hand to answer the question. Okay? And then lastly, any kind of dialogue. If there's going to be dialogue, like if the person in the shot is going to be speaking, what are some of the key things that they are so we know that that dialogue matches up with the shot. You guys with me? Does this make sense? It's always better to over-explain than to be ambiguous or to leave something unknown. Okay? Now, when we go through this stuff and you guys actually start doing your projects, the one thing I don't want is stick figures. Everybody in this room, you could be the worst artist in the world, but every single person can draw better than a stick figure. Okay? Stick figure, don't shake your head. No, yes, they can. Okay? Instead of drawing just a stick for the body, draw a rectangle to show width. Do you guys get what I'm saying? This is a better version of a stick figure. I can tell that because of the drawing that I did on this guy's face, that this is a 3/4 profile to the person's left, and that they're going to be, you can see the width of their body. You can see the sleeves, the arm, okay? You don't have to be a great artist to do it. Now, one of the other things that we add in there, guys, is any kind of names or any text graphics, especially with the stuff that we do and the movies and films that you guys are going to be creating, Mighty. It's important to have the name graphic on there as well so you know where you want that graphic to appear, okay? So that we know that we're following all those different rules, like the rule of thirds, okay? Like filling the frame. Does this make sense to everybody? Yes? In all, storyboards are not very difficult to do, guys, but the important part is when you're doing them to be able to convey clearly to whoever's going to be filming what you want your shots to look like, okay? Does this make sense to everybody? Give me a thumbs up if you're with me. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to have you guys go into Canvas leave this PowerPoint open because these are our notes and you're going to want to look at them in a little bit. But I want you to go into Canvas and I want you to go into this assignment, the actual assignment that we just opened, okay? This 3-1, just like mine is, okay? Just like here. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn it in. So even though you didn't write notes, even though you didn't write information down, we're still going to turn this in so that I know you guys have seen it and that we've gone over it. Everybody good? So we're going to follow those steps and do that together, okay? Is everybody on the Canvas page? Okay.